The movie begins with Norman Glass, a mature and dependable individual, chatting with his colleague Roy in his office. Roy suggests that Dennis, a friend from the accounting department, would be perfect to lead a new project. After their meeting, they engage in a casual conversation about a woman who lost her husband just 13 months into their relationship. Norman wonders how he would cope with such a loss. Meanwhile, a woman at the reception desk overhears their conversation and is intrigued by Norman's perspective. She asks where his office is and heads there. Upon entering, she notices a photo of a woman on his desk and instantly transforms her appearance to match the woman in the picture. When Norman returns, he finds a stunning woman, Addie, sitting at his desk. He's captivated by her beauty. The story jumps forward a year, and we see Addie and Norman celebrating their first wedding anniversary with Dennis and his wife Barbara, who are coincidentally celebrating their anniversary too. The two couples enjoy each other's company, laughing and joking. Norman thanks Addie for baking a beautiful cake, and Dennis compliments her, calling her the second most wonderful woman in the world, after Barbara, whom Addie introduced him to. Dennis raises a toast to thank Addie for bringing Barbara into his life, and they begin to flirt. Norman and Addie share a tender moment, with Norman assuring her of his eternal love. The evening ends with both couples toasting their anniversaries. Later that night, Norman and Addie continue their celebration in their bedroom. Addie repeatedly reassures Norman of his love for her, and he responds affirmatively, leading to an intimate moment. At midnight, Norman wakes up to find himself alone in bed, wondering where his wife could have gone at such a late hour. He heads downstairs and finds her at the computer. He tries to sneak up on her to scare her playfully, but when he goes to kiss her neck, he's repulsed by a sour taste. Addie turns around to find her husband complaining about the taste of her neck. He unintentionally compares it to something dead, and Addie takes offense to his words. She cries and heads upstairs to the bathroom while Norman apologizes. Addie immediately gets in the shower to wash away the unpleasant odor. Norman follows her to apologize again, but he's startled by a monstrous reflection of Addie in the mirror. He looks directly at her, and she appears normal. He wipes the mirror, and only sees Addie's usual reflection. When Addie comes out of the shower, she asks why he's there. Still confused, Norman says he came to apologize again. Addie brushes off his apology, and once he leaves, she breaks down in tears, overcome with fear. The next day, Addie makes Norman's favorite breakfast, but he rushes out without eating. As he leaves, Addie asks for a kiss and jokingly asks if she still tastes sour. He dismisses her with a smile, but outside, he realizes he can't taste anything from her kiss. Concerned about his sense of taste, he visits his doctor at the hospital. Norman tells his doctor about the taste from Addie's kiss the night before and how he can't taste her now, although he can taste other things. The doctor suggests it might be a coincidence and advises him not to worry. Later, Norman visits his friend Dennis's house. Barbara answers the door and reveals that Dennis left her the previous night. Norman is surprised by the sudden split and tries to understand more. He notices the lights are off and finds all the bulbs are broken. He asks Barbara about their separation, as Dennis has always felt lucky to have her. Barbara, sipping her wine, seems down and tells Norman that Dennis was uncharacteristically harsh with her. Norman reassures her that Dennis will return, and as he drives away, Addie arrives at Barbara's house from the backyard. She had arrived before him. She expresses disbelief at the unfolding events, and Barbara tells her they share the same fate, and disaster is inevitable. It becomes clear that Addie and Barbara are not what they seem. In the evening, Norman and Addie discuss her new romance novel and their friend's separation. Addie expresses her fear that they might end up like their friends, but Norman reassures her. They plan to have dinner and spend a private evening together. However, when Norman tries to kiss Addie, he smells something unpleasant but blames it on the trash. Addie realizes Norman is referring to her scent and feels upset. The next day, Norman asks his colleague Roy if he has ever experienced anything unattractive about a woman, but Roy can only think of superficial things. Later, Barbara visits Addie at home, asking if Norman is around. Addie says he's not, and Barbara continues their conversation, feeling at ease. She wants Addie to see her new appearance and transforms into a completely different woman. Addie observes her, commenting on her looks. Barbara chooses a black woman's appearance and inquires about Addie's marriage, suggesting she think about her next move. Addie heads downstairs, uninterested in Barbara's advice, and grabs a drink. But Barbara insists it's only a matter of time before she's discovered. Addie insists this time is different because she genuinely loves Norman. Addie seems irritated and tells Barbara she's not like her. She mentions she's giving Norman more than physical intimacy, friendship and love too. But Barbara replies that it has to end eventually, and love and friendship can't change her true nature. Next, Norman meets Dennis at the park, and Dennis tells Norman that Barbara is stalking him. He describes a horrifying experience with Barbara, and while doing so, Barbara appears. Dennis runs away, gets hit by a car, and dies. Norman is shocked and mourns his friend's death. At Barbara's house, people offer condolences. Norman tries to comfort Barbara and smells perfume. Barbara tells him it's new and European and suggests everyone eventually loses everything. She's moving on to start fresh. That night, Addie comforts Norman about Dennis's death. Norman sees her and tells her she's getting more beautiful every day, surprisingly. Addie argues that what happened to the other couples doesn't have to happen between them. She tries to convince him everything is okay and tells him she loves him. He kisses her hesitantly, but Addie pushes him to be intimate. He gives in, and they passionately make love. Meanwhile, Norman feels Addie's back changing into something slimy and jelly-like. He checks his hand, but it's fine. He turns his face around, hating the horror he's experiencing, and Addie cries out that it's just her. The next morning, Norman visits his doctor to understand what's happening to his mind. The doctor suggests hysterical blindness, but Norman questions why he'd have a sudden psychological problem. The doctor eases the situation, telling Norman not to worry. That night, Norman comes home to a surprise party thrown by Addie and their friends and co-workers. Addie tells him she did it because he's been stressed lately. Roy compliments Addie, and Norman's doctor shows up, invited by Addie. Norman is terrified that Addie communicates with his doctor. The doorbell rings, and Norman opens it to find a friend of Addie's, Barbara, but he doesn't recognize her due to her changed appearance. Norman struggles to understand the strange incidents involving his wife. He heads to the balcony for fresh air, and Roy asks him to come inside. Norman shares his suspicions, but Roy assures him he has the perfect wife. Roy heads inside and talks with Addie, and Norman suspects his wife is fooling everyone and turning against him. After the party, Norman asks Addie how she knows his doctor and invited him. He looks afraid and tearfully asks if he's going mad. Addie tells him she loves him, and they'll get through this. He agrees, and they seem reconciled. Addie heads to the kitchen to make him a sandwich, and he finds a gift on the table, a Chinese mystical toy with multiple layers. When he opens them, he hears a slimy, jelly-like sound. As Addie walks in, he sees the scary figure he once saw in the bathroom mirror. He drops the toy, terrified, and follows her to ensure she's human. Norman continues to hear the slimy footsteps and tells himself it's just his mind playing tricks on him. Norman goes to their bedroom to apologize and plead for forgiveness. Addie tells him it's okay and reveals she can no longer control what he sees or hears. She says it's always a year after being with someone that their power breaks down, and the mind becomes immune to her control. She confesses she was afraid and blocked his senses at one point but is through with that now. Addie heads to the light and reveals her true self, a shape-shifting alien from another planet, a slimy, scary jelly creature disguised as a woman named Addie. Norman backs off, stuck, and Addie confronts him, revealing her love by licking his face. Disgusted and terrified, Norman yells, but the image fades to an ambulance taking him away. Even though he is still wailing to be freed, he is restrained to the bed and being transported to a mental health facility. He observes Addie and her shape-shifting extraterrestrial buddy Barbara from a distance as they enter the residence. Even though they have a sympathetic appearance, by the time the movie ends, we can see that they have been carrying out this evil scheme and getting away with it. For the final occasion, we catch Addie jogging in the park and taking in the scenery. She appears to be searching for a new partner and is as gorgeous and youthful as ever. When a young man rushes toward her, she immediately changes into a cute, athletic woman, whom he finds incredibly attractive and strikes up a conversation with. After identifying herself as Stacy, she departs with her next victim. Turn on alerts, like, and subscribe for more videos similar to this one. Thank you for watching.